I don't think the industry as a whole appreciates the difficulty in that and the complexity in it, and that it's not just eat in a calorie deficit and you'll be fine. Oh, what, you can't? Like, what's your problem? Are you weak? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much more to it than just telling someone, oh, we'll just stop eating shit and start eating healthy fruit and vegetables.
Hello everyone and welcome. So today I've got the most fantastic guest that I want to share with you. Someone who has always shared so much kindness in my life and I've taken so much influence from with everything. Hello, Zoe Knight from Musclenerds.
So nice. I can't top that. All right, podcast done.
Well, you know those things that you get on Instagram and stuff that tell you like about posts.
The memories.
It's been about 5 years since I had my training with you, and during that time, you guys were quite hot on trying to get me to meditate and trying to open that up, and that was when I decided that I was going to get engaged and marry my wife. But I had some of the.
You were one of our first clients, I think. You're in the very early stages of Musclenerds.
I mean, I knew of Luke previous, but I found a magazine, and it was during a time I was having a really tough time because I'd lost my weight. I'd lost 10 stone or whatever it was, and then I'd still got the skin left, and I lived with that for 3 or 4 years. And I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have this abdominoplasty. Little did I know what that was gonna entail after, but I was gonna do that, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna reach out to this guy because he feeds my spirit animal. He's like just as like nerdy and everything else about me. And also there was the prevalence of the company that he'd worked with previously. But during that process, it was just like, wow, you guys are just the yin and yang to one another. They're just amazing. You are some of my absolute favorite people, and it has to be said. And so firstly, I want to open up this conversation with the biggest and warmest thank you, because you guys are fucking awesome.
Thank you. That is really kind of you to say. We are absolutely the opposites of each other. But what's really nice is our fundamental values are the same. And I think that's how we work. And it's funny. So we started Musclenerds very early on in our relationship together out of necessity. So I had quit my jobs. I'd sold my car. I'd flown over to America. When I was there on my 90-day visitor visa, he finished up at the company he was working with. So we both found ourselves jobless, and we're like, we'll just announce Musclenerds. And Musclenerds is a nickname that he had been called from some of his ex-colleagues. So that was it was just a no-brainer there. That's what we were going to call the company. So we didn't have to sit there and brainstorm. And so we kind of just said, all right, well, we're starting an online training. We were then kind of inundated with people who wanted to work specifically with Luke that hadn't wanted to work for the company that he previously worked for. And we were just really reactive to what people were wanting. Whatever came to us, we figured out how to do it. Everything was done manually. But for the first maybe, I would probably say 2 or 3 years, there was just huge frustration on my part because we were so opposite. We needed that complete oppositeness. My strengths are his weaknesses and his strengths are my weaknesses. And it really evens out as long as we can, or I can, just let him be him and do what he's good at, and I just plug all the holes. Like, he's the big picture person, he's the idea person, I'm the small details person. So he'll have this big idea and be like, oh my God, let's do this, and we'll announce it, and I'm going to announce that we're doing this. And I was like, that's about 6 months worth of preparation. You can't just announce that. We haven't done, because he just doesn't see all the little things. And so it's really worked out in our favor. He's the tough love. He can be very blunt. I'm more of like a cheerleader than a coach. That's why I don't take clients, because I'm far too soft. He's able to have that firmness and that authority, whereas I'm just like, oh, you don't want to do burpees? That's okay. You don't have to. I'll do the burpees for you. Like, I'm just, I can't. And so, we are absolutely yin and yang, and we are absolutely opposite. And it took me a really long time to be okay with that in that work environment, and realize that it really is a benefit, and it's probably why we're able to do what we can do.
I think that's what any relationship or any whole needs. I mean, me and my wife, we are not the same, but I love that. I love the fact that she brings me back to earth.
One time I just lost it. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Do I need to be business partner Zoe, or do I need to be like wife Zoe? And wife Zoe always wins, because if she doesn't, and I'm business partner Zoe, has the potential to ruin the wife relationship. Whereas I'm more okay with if being the wife Zoe ruins the business, like that's better option for me. I couldn't have a business without him, and he couldn't have a business without me. And I think that was the point where I had that realization that was like, we both are building this in equal parts. So I really struggled to feel like I had any serious contribution, but now we would not be where we are. There's so much more to just your craft than running a business or doing it. That's the good thing, is we've just been able to let Luke do what he's good at, and that is the researching, the learning, and the teaching, and the coaching. And then he doesn't have to worry about anything else, and that anything else is huge. And it's huge. So you're right, you learn your craft, but then how do you turn that craft into a functioning business? And there's the whole finance aspect, admin aspect, there's the customer service aspect, there's the systems, there's there's so much. Typically, if you're good at this, you're not going to be good at this, and if you're good at this, you don't have this. So we're definitely yin and yang, and we're a really beneficial combination, I suppose. And I just feel like it's all fallen into places how it's supposed to be. I guess in the early days, I didn't realize how much work went into the back end of everything. So now that I know, and now that I contribute and kind of oversee a lot of stuff, I feel a lot more like it's us, more so him. My dream and my plan is for Musclenerds to get to the point where it's kind of run like the employees are running it, and there's limited needed input from Luke or myself, because I really want Musclenerds to fund a dog rescue farm. How I want it set up is I would like to buy some land, like tiny homes or villas, or just, scatter the land with some rooms. And then we have our house. We have a gym, because we've got a really nice gym set up in our garage at home. We've got all Atlantis equipment at home. So we've pretty much got the gym set up, but I want to have like a gym, our house, and then the land is scattered. And I would like people to be able to, it's like a retreat, to come and stay with us for a week. And this is within the fitness industry, so they can come and stay with us for a week, and they can learn from Luke, train with Luke, they can eat with us, we have meals together. But then I also want us to have a dog rescue farm, and people can then choose to come and stay for a week as a holiday, stay in one of the villas, and they play with the dogs, they help feed the dogs, and so that's what help funds being able to rescue dogs and feed the dogs and give all the dogs the vet stuff. So that's my ultimate, it's my 10 to 15 year plan, is to have like a retreat. And there's the Musclenerds retreat, but there's also, we can just save dogs.
I love businesses that have great ethics, and I love businesses that work on things like sustainability and things like that. Wellness gives back. When you're well and you can be well, then you give back. And that's what animals do inherently to us. Dogs and humans would hunt together. Do you know what I mean? We'd share that time together. I remember reading, there's a little quip or a story about, this guy that's walking down the beach and he's throwing starfish back into the ocean. And someone says to him, why are you doing this? There's so many of these on the beach. You're never going to help them all. And he throws one into the ocean and says, but I helped that one.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. I think people don't realize that big things happen if we all just do small things. It's the same with the habits, right? It's accumulation of all these small things. A really good segue into talking about why people don't get into fitness in the first instance, they just don't even take that first step, is because they look at the extreme, or they look at, they're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. I'm going to have to start eating this. I'm going to have to start exercising. I hate exercising. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that for the rest of my life. And so it's just like, I'm not even going to bother starting. Or they'll look at, especially social media is the worst potentially. I mean, it's got the potential to be the worst. It's also got the potential to be the best. But, you just look at the fitness influencers, and you just look at them and you're like, I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm not even going to bother starting. I don't want to have to live like that. I'm not even going to bother starting. Whereas if they just realize that, man, just do small things like swap out one thing with the other in your breakfast, like have maybe a salad with your eggs instead of toast every morning. That's gonna have an impact. All that shit they say, like just take the stairs. Do that, like just small things like that. And it's the same thing, like just doing one thing or helping one person it adds up.
That's exactly what people kind of need. When I turn around to people and I say, like, dude, okay, like, seriously, let's just swap out your latte for a flat white. Let's just see where that gets you in 6 weeks, right? And then whilst at the same time, let's work on some other little things to get you going, yeah? Don't sit there and go, well, that's not enough, you know? And then there's that issue of, like, is there enough challenge with the support? But it is those little things that you just embed every single day that in 3 months, it's like going, oh, yeah, actually, no, yeah. Because a lot of people just jump into something, like you were saying, and their perfectionism takes over and goes, you know, actually, I'm not just going to start that because that is so far off. I just can't even comprehend.
Imagine doing it or being there. Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I mean, the industry's full of extremism, isn't it? And that's what sells. So it's a battle you've got to fight. It's
a matter of that word of diet and dieting. Is that diet is the kind of thing that you're doing every single day. It's just your diet.
Regardless of what it is, that's your diet. It's people's perception of food words, as well.
Yeah, and dieting is like, it's like being a prisoner. I'm a prisoner for like 2 weeks. Like, well, actually, no, let's look at what you could be doing in a year's time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and the things you're happy to keep doing. You know, what are the habits and the behaviors that someone that is the kind of person that you'd like to be, what would they do every single day?
That's the thing, that like change is so hard for people. It's so hard. And it's funny, one of the subjects that so when COVID hit, I was studying naturopathy and I was doing it part-time. I'm just chipping away at it because I really enjoy studying. I really, really like it. One of the subjects that I'm doing now that I started at the start of November is sociology and how society affects food choices and your food preferences and how you've been raised. And that covers things like your religion. And it's a really, like, it's kind of the opposite thinking of like psychology. So if you go to a psychologist, it's addressing you as a person and your own thoughts and your own habits and how you can change yourself. Whereas sociology has that influence, like, okay, this isn't a problem from you, this is a societal problem. So, for example, if someone is made redundant or is unemployed, you go to psychologists and it's you. Okay, so what can you do to get a job? What can you do to make yourself more employable? Whereas if you look at it from a sociological aspect, it's why is society, as a society, out of 10 million people, 1 million are unemployed. That's a society issue. We need to address it at a societal level. And so it has that thinking of our decisions and our thoughts are not our own. They're influenced from everything in our environment. It's a super uncomfortable thought to think that you're not in control of all your preferences and all your habits, but it's so true. And that's the same as when you address people with their nutrition, the way they eat. Like, everyone's got an emotional attachment to the way they eat. Everyone's got a belief to the way they eat. Everyone's got things so deeply rooted and embedded in them that they don't even realize, like, it's not a conscious thought. So for people to change that, I don't think the industry as a whole appreciates the difficulty in that and the complexity in it, and that it's not just eat in a calorie deficit and you'll be fine. Oh, what, you can't? Like, what's your problem? Are you weak? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much more to it than just telling someone, oh, we'll just stop eating shit and start eating healthy fruit and vegetables. So education, everyone's like, you've got to educate your clients. You've got to educate people as to the why. If they know the why, they're more inclined. And yes, to a degree. But we live in a time where we have never known so much than we do now, but we are more unhealthy and bigger than ever. So clearly knowledge isn't the answer. Like, yes, like, it's a necessity. Like, it is part of it, but it's not the answer in its entirety. Like, there's so much more aspects you need to consider than just telling someone to do something and why. Like, I don't know. I think exercise, I think the industry needs to move far more towards like psychological aspects and like what drives a person. And I just think it can be so damaging to people if we're not careful, and it's oversimplified and it's overcomplicated. So I don't know what the answer is. Like, I'm not saying I have the answer, but there's just so much more to it there's just so much more to it.
Well, and I'll tell you what, the way in which you do embed and change all these habits that we were talking about originally is the matter of, if you're just around it more often, then you'd understand how that stuff is. And the social aspect is, when I lost my weight, lifestyle had to change. You know, my background is in music and music performance, and we all know what musicians are like.
And the music lifestyle.
But you're not a rock star, so so it's not cool. You just live the life, but it's not cool. You still turn up. You still turn up to. Exactly. You just still. There's no chicks. No. But like you still turn up to your job at 9 o'clock in the morning and have to sit there for 8 hours and carry on with it. And I needed to shake that, because for me and my personal body, like, I needed to get rid of that.
Yeah.
But as well is that you learn that social aspect was actually feeding so much more, that it was like, sometimes I just felt like I needed to be needed.
Yeah.
And I needed to belong. My tribe was sort of feeding me in this way, but it wasn't feeding me, if that made sense. So when I got my own identity and I stood for what I wanted to stand for, I lost myself. I'm not going to lie. I literally lost a person in tissue. And I would see myself in a mirror and I wouldn't even recognize myself.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I needed to find myself again in a brand new tribe. But talking about being in different places of the world, I mean, you were here in the UK for a little while. You were based here in London for a while, weren't you?
Yeah. So the way when Luke and I met, I was living in Australia, a New Zealander living in Australia, so I'm not even a citizen of this country. And then he was traveling the world for his previous company teaching, and so he was based out of Rhode Island in America. We met here. I actually went to one of his courses. Didn't like him at all. I thought he was so arrogant. I thought he was rude. I was like, he's just as typical rude American. Like, I know that's stereotyping, but he just really fit that stereotype at the time. But he, he's got his reasons as to why he was rude in that class. He claims. I think in 2016, I think we spent 3 months in London. I fell in love with it. I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful and amazing. I love the history. But I think probably about 7 weeks in, I was like, I'm ready to leave. Because I remember we did a course there one weekend. It was an animal flow course. On the end of the second day, I was just exhausted, and I was like, you know what? I just wish I could get in my car and drive 15 minutes home. Like 2 tube rides or a train or whatever. And I was just like, everything was just an effort. And I was like, I would love to just be able to get in my car and drive home. London was nice, but I don't know if I could live there.
Are there any foods or anything that remind you of the UK? Or anything that's just like, that reminds me of my time there,
Luke loves the Indian food. I remember we shopped a lot at Tesco, and this is really strange. I would always get the little pre-thinged of mashed potato, like you just buy the mashed potato and shrimps. And I would have prawns and mashed potato. Pizza Express.
Pizza Express.
Luke would go there, and he does the one he always orders, and because it comes with its own roller to cut, like it doesn't come pre-cut, he would roll his into a burrito and then just eat it. Like, that's how he would eat his pizza.
So I've got to try the mashed potato and prawns from.
Oh no, it's so strange. Like, it's the weirdest combination. I don't know why. I just must have had. And I barely eat mashed potato. Like, I never make it myself. The only time I'll ever have it if it's like on your meal at a restaurant. So I don't know why. Maybe I just probably needed the iodine. I was probably craving shrimp and then felt like mashed. I don't know why I did that. It's the strangest combination. Like, I probably wouldn't do it now, but I did eat that a lot in London.
For you guys, I imagine it's more Thai.
With a lot of Thai.
Yeah, I imagine that where you are in the world. Is there anything then that reminds you of home?
It's more the junk food, like the confectionery, like the biscuits and the cookies or whatever you guys call them. I'm pretty sure you call them biscuits. Team biscuits. My dad is a hunter. He hunted and he still hunts almost every weekend. And we lived off fresh venison growing up. It's literally all we had. So we would have venison steak, venison sausages, venison cervelois, venison mince, venison roast. He just would go out and kill the deer every week, and that's all we ate. And occasionally we'd have a Sunday roast chicken. But every night it was venison, mashed potato, and the only thing that would change would be our overboiled vegetable, whether it was beans, silver beet. It was, anyway, I hated it at the time. I hated it every night. What do we eat for dinner? Venison. Then we'd have venison. If we had a roast on a Sunday, which was a treat, it would be the venison heated up in the gravy from the night before. So venison, and it's funny because, like I said, at the time I hated it. Now you cannot get venison anywhere in Australia, and I would kill. You go home and there's just a deep freezer full of venison, and now I would love venison. So venison reminds me of home, and then it's just there's a really nice ice cream bar back home that I love. But we're starting to be able to get more New Zealand food over here in Australia because so many Kiwis move. So a lot of the Kiwi snack foods and stuff you can buy here now. There's not a lot that's kind of exclusively you can only get in New Zealand. But I did find, I remember when Luke and I first started dating, before I ever took him back to New Zealand for the first time, and we were arguing over kind of who had the best cuisine. And he was like,
sorry, I'm on Luke's side. I'm on Luke's side. You know that's
but the difference, so yes, in America you can literally get anything you want and everything is so tasty. The difference though is when you come to New Zealand, the food is undeniably different and better, and it's the same even in between New Zealand and Australia. The produce is so fresh and the meat is so, Luke doesn't eat lamb. He's never liked lamb, but he eats lamb in New Zealand so much nicer. It just must be American. I don't know, I'm pretty sure they probably have New Zealand lamb in America anyway. So I just think there's definitely, the food in New Zealand is fresh and taste really high quality, and then the food in America is just American.
But hang on a second, there is a difference between American food and Texan food.
Oh, and I'm not allowed to call Luke an American. I get in trouble. He's Texan. So when we traveled for the 2 years nonstop, that's really difficult to stay healthy because whenever you're somewhere, you just think, but it's only here that I can get really good X. So in America, in Texas, it's a good barbecue and good Tex-Mex. So it's I'm going to eat it while I'm here because I can't get it anywhere else in the world. What's Luke's one in London is Pizza Express. He's like, I can't get Pizza Express. He loves Pizza Express. And then there was a restaurant that he took me to. It's by Wembley Stadium. And it's just it does bone marrow and all that sort of stuff. And he goes there every time. And in New Zealand, it's just a junk in New Zealand.
I think just where you are in the world though, as well, like I was saying about Thai and those Japanese, Chinese-y sort of influences that you have in that area of the world, is that the premise is based on eating from the land. Yeah. It's not a matter of let's celebrate how many McDonald's we can have. I can go to my local town, village. And one night, me and my wife drove through, and I think that there was 19 in under a 1 mile stretch, 19 takeaways or fish and chip shops. When you think of British cuisine, you think of fish and chips and things like that. It's not everyone lives out of what we would call the chippy, as it were. They call it the chippy. My wife's grandmother calls it the fishy, just because it's something that's different or whatever.
We have a lot of fish. We have a lot of fish and chip shops, and more so, what I noticed the difference between here and America. America's got a lot of chain takeaway stores. So they've got McDonald's, Burger King's. It's just the chains, right? And it's the same. Whereas here, there's a lot of independently owned takeaway places. So you've got a one-off burger shop that does great burgers, and you've got a one-off Thai place, an Indian place, and fish and chip shop. So we don't have as many chain, if that makes sense.
So when's the Institute for Physical Culture Delhi going to come out then? So you can pop by the gym and pick up a box that's full of the most amazing.
Well, what's really cool is right next door in the same building that the gym's in, there's a cafe. We'll get him to make protein shakes and stuff. But the problem is, it's really interesting with Musclenerds having gone from our main clientele and students predominantly being other coaches to the gym being completely general population. I think it's been a real eye-opener for Luke. I know he's trained for God, my God, he's been training for over 2 decades now. And I think we just get so lost in talking to people that already have a certain base knowledge,
Yeah.
and then going into a gym environment where, you know, there's just zero knowledge. One of the things that we've started doing is we have a lot of people come to us and they say, look, the only way I lost weight in the past was when I completely cut out my carbohydrates. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm going keto. And it's like, you don't have to do that. Like, really start at the very basic fundamental of how things work. It's difficult because, if, for example, we had a client, she was in my class the other day and she's like, oh, I started keto last week and I've already lost 2.5 kilos. And I was like, oh, like, that's awesome. Well done. Congratulations. And she's like, yeah, and I stuffed up on the weekend because, you know, I went out for breakfast and I got I can't remember what it was called, because it ended up being made out of potatoes, so it threw me out of ketosis. So I wanted to say to her, like, that initial weight loss is just your water and carbs. Like, but I don't want to deter her, and I don't want to be like, you don't have to cut out carbohydrates. I said I didn't even go there with her, because for me to explain what's going on, you have to preface it with so much information for them to understand. So I was like, I'm just going to say that's awesome, but just make sure you don't, you know, go too crazy. One thing that we've started to do, like you mentioned earlier, so when the difference between the word diet and dieting, and you say dieting and it's just like a hellhole, it's restriction, it's removal, it's shit. We don't talk about anything about like removing or restriction. It's just like add protein, add vegetables, and it's addition. So it's more of a nutrition approach, like let's fuel yourself, let's give yourself what it needs, as opposed to let's just remove everything that you love eating. It's just like this amount of protein at every meal and half your plate's vegetables. Like, and that typically acts as a food displacement anyway. Yeah. But it's just like getting into that mindset of them without thinking of just like taking away. It's like, let's just add some stuff.
Someone said to me the other day, they was like, why should I put protein powder in my smoothie?
Yeah.
And I said, I was like, well, okay, well, if you're going to put a protein powder in, then you're probably going to remove something else. I'm probably going to not have like milk or something. I don't
need as much of this. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what you're saying there about the displacement of it.
Yeah. And you know, when you eat a lot of non-starch veggies and you do start to increase your protein, you're fuller for longer, so you don't snack as often. And if you tell them to, you know, you can basically eat whatever you want, but just make sure you eat protein and your veggies first, and then they just don't eat as much.
Here's one that I get a lot that's really interesting, and I must share this with you. It's people that won't eat bananas. They won't eat banana. Let me give them a bit more context. I won't eat a banana because it's a carbohydrate, but it's Friday. Where's my wine? Or the gin. And then you sit there and go, well, that banana is like more healthy and gives you and feeds your nutrient needs in your body. And yet you're quite happy to sit and drink.
There's so little intuitive knowledge on how our body works. We're not taught it at school. Like, you know, you're kind of taught about your organs and you're taught from a very mechanistic point of view. But it's just like what you eat, how that fuels you, like what you take from that, what it actually does. So I think people just think, oh, look, they associate. So, I mean, eating and hunger is a biological need, but I think it's fueled by psychology now. And our bodies still operate in a environment of scarcity, but we live in abundance. And so because of that, I think that there's no thought given. There's just nothing given. There's no thought, there's no feeling, there's no intuition given to what I eat and what it actually does. It's just like, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. We eat so we can do cell regeneration. We eat so we can survive. We eat so we can have energy. And I just wish that we could learn this from an earlier age so we could make better decisions as opposed to being influenced just by marketing.
Yeah, sadly, we don't all get given the book. When you're born, it's like, this is what you do. You have to learn that exactly through what you were saying earlier about like social aspects and what does everyone else do. I'm into this thing called metabolic typing, you know. I think it is a really interesting insight into how people should and typically will eat. And I do find that a lot of the time it works. The traits work. But then, for example, you know, I come up as a mixed type all the time, which is like... you can eat anything, mate. Yeah, which I know all about that. But there's definitely been times when I've been a protein type, and then actually you sit and think about the situation you're in your life and all those other things, and you see, actually, yeah, I can see that now. Once you learn things, you know, you can't unlearn them, can you? In times where it's like where I'm a carb type, and I'm definitely in that world of like, I need a kilo of sweet potatoes at every meal today. Do you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
I was saying this to one of my other podcast guests. I can literally be like craving like sage or cranberries or something. Unbeknown to myself, I was craving like sweet potato, cranberry, and sage or something like that. And then about a week later, I was poorly. And it was because I was trying to fight something off. Something's come in.
It's really interesting. You need to be so in tune with your body. You need to listen to what your body is trying to tell you. But to do that, you have to know, A, what shit means. B, you have to be somewhat in tune with how you're feeling and what you're craving. And the problem is, like, what you do and what you get out of it often seems so far removed from each other. So, for example, if someone's eating something and their skin is turning to shit because of it, or their mood, and then they're not going to associate that with what they eat. They don't know the links. For example, if you wake up one morning and you're craving avocado, eat avocado. And then if you wake up the next morning and it's the last thing you feel like that's a sign. Like that's something, your body telling you something. If you're craving something, it's typically your body telling you something. Because I go through phases. There was a phase, and it was probably when I was in London. I've done it in Australia as well, where all I want is prawns or seafood. There's a reason. And then there's time now, like where I'm at right now, it's like the last thing I feel like doing is eating prawns.
But not only that, but I think that people's lives are so pushed against that, so that to switch it off, because you need to be sat at your desk at 9 a.m. in the morning, and then you can't leave and have anything to eat until it's 12 p.m. Then it's okay. Then you can have your lunch, but then you can't eat again until like 6 o'clock at night when you get home. And it's straight away, it's like that works completely against your natural metabolism, the natural way that you need to feed, the natural way that your brain works against the food that you put into your mouth. Because Karen bought in, a bag of donuts. Oh, well, we're all eating donuts this afternoon. Yeah, because it's her birthday today or whatever.
We celebrate with food. We're rewarded with food. It's no longer just something that's done to keep us alive.
Well, there is the heritage of, community and feasting, which I find is really interesting if you look at different religions, and different religions celebrate fasting and being without. And I think that says a lot about modern culture, especially in our worlds where we're not desperate in need for food, but when we do celebrate, that we celebrate with food. But that's obviously linking that harmony between, the way in which your gut feeds your emotional feeling in social situations as well. Biopsychosocialism or whatever, isn't it? That's the really
I know, like a lot of natural health practitioners and stuff like that focus on that biosocial psycho. So it's like you can't just address one aspect of someone's life. You have to look into like their biological needs, their social aspects, their psychology. I think it's a fantastic model. I wish more like modern medicine doctors kind of adopted it, but
I had a really bad problem with my digestion, and I went to see gastrologists, and they put the camera down to test for me for my celiacs and all these other things, because they found some ulcers and stuff in my stomach. And it came back that I was like negative for celiacs. And you know what my gastrologist turned around to me? This is the doctor for your stomach health. She said, well, you can celebrate. Go and eat a sandwich. Like, I eat biscuits and bread, and then, I'm poorly, without being too graphic.
No, I'm the same.
And then you're telling me, you're actively telling me as a clinician to go away and do something like that,
I just wish the two modalities would merge. Like, I wish that they wouldn't shun each other so much. Natural side of stuff like the nutritionists, the naturopaths, all that sort of stuff, I wish that they were used more for the preventative side of things. I wish there was more value placed on prevention in the modern medicine. Because, for example, one of my best friends, she had some issues going on. And we ended up going with her took her to the hospital one night, and she had unbelievably low, I think it was hemoglobin, but it was 1 point off them being able to do a blood transfusion. It was like, okay, so you send her away and just wait until she gets bad enough. And that's the premise. It's like, I think there's like a line, and it's you're ill or you're not. For example, with your celiacs, it's okay, so you do have celiacs or you don't. If you don't, go and eat a sandwich. There's no middle ground of, okay, but gluten still irritates me. It still has an effect. I've obviously got something going on. It's, well, you do or you don't. You don't, so you're good. You know, there's no, okay, well, how can we treat this so you can eat it and not be a problem, or like what's going on that's causing that? It's just, you don't, fine, go away now. Go have a sandwich.
What do you need to thrive, not survive? Now, look, Zoe, we've been talking for a long time. I know it's getting late because I can see that my son's come up.
I need to turn the light on.
My son's come up and yours has gone down. But where can we find out more about business of Musclenerds and everything else that you're doing?
I can't tell you how many podcasts I tune down. That sounds really arrogant, like I get asked all the time, but I normally say no to podcasts because I'm the back-end person. Luke's the talker. And a lot of the time I feel like it's only in the last recent years that I've felt like I've actually had something to say of my own. Like otherwise I've always said no because I'm like, well, I'm just going to regurgitate stuff I've learned off Luke or that Luke's taught me or that he talks about. So with Musclenerds, we have our Musclenerds website, which is www.musclenerds.net. And that just kind of gives an overview of the services we offer, really. Our Instagram, which is musclenerds_health. And then we have our Facebook, which is just Musclenerds. And we're pretty lucky in the sense that we've grown predominantly from word of mouth. It's kind of just people who have liked us and told other people about us. So Musclenerds is predominantly targeted for, we have our main demographic is other personal trainers, coaches, and health professionals. So we typically have a focus on teaching the why. We're really lucky in how we teach. It's not a step-by-step process. So it's not here's a protocol or here's step A, step B, step C. Now go and do that with your clients. Yeah. It's more of a let's teach you the underlying physiology and the underlying how and why of how things work. Figure out the how for yourself. You know which methods to choose. You know why they work. You know when not to use them, which I believe is just as important as, if not more important, of knowing when to use them. It does require you to actually work to learn it. So because of that, the best coaches in our network, just the best people, they're the people that actually care and give a shit and want to, do the right thing and take the time and effort to learn. So that's what you would find. We also do online training, and that's not just for coaches, that's for anyone. We address everything. So if you come to us for training, everything is completely customized. We don't use templated stuff. Everything is written from scratch, specific to you. And we do take our time to learn, your lifestyle, your stress. We have a really big focus on stress and stress management and stress physiology. So that's one of the main things that teaches is how stress, actually how it affects your bodies and all your different systems, and how to measure it and how to make it better and how to work with it as opposed to it working against you. So online training and then education for coaches and health professionals and people who are interested in their health.
And from personal experience, it was one of the best things, and it's still something that I'd really love to do. And you should definitely check out Musclenerds. It's been absolutely amazing. I'm going to end on this one question though, Zoe. It's a really important one. Diet Pepsi or Diet Coke?
Coke, hands down, Coke. Luke's Pepsi, I'm Coke. I've gotten into such a habit, like I've been drinking it like the whole time that I've been here. But Coke, I can't do Pepsi. Pepsi, because it's really good when you're dieting or if you're going through a calorie deficit.
I know that if I asked Luke, it'd be Dr. Pepper. But you
can't find Diet Dr. Pepper anywhere in Australia. You can find Dr. Pepper in lots of places, but you cannot find Diet Dr. Pepper. So he doesn't often have Dr. Peppers here. It's if he's doing maybe a carb load, he'll buy one. But it's really hard to find the Diet Dr. Pepper, so he doesn't really have it a lot. But he's Diet Pepsi. We have to buy a case of Pepsi Max and a case of Coke Zero, and
Diet Cherry Pepsi Max is where it's at.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
There's a mango Pepsi out here at the moment. I don't know if you guys have it.
I've already said that they should do a coconut one. They should do a coconut and cherry. That would be a really good one. Do you remember Diet Pepsi Twist?
No.
No? All right. So that was like lemon and lime with Diet Pepsi. That was great.
No.
Yes. Diet Pepsi.
I remember Coke Zero. They were the first ones to kind of come out with the flavored Coke, weren't they? Not Coke Zero, the vanilla Coke. Wasn't that one of the first ones to come out, vanilla Coke?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And that's when they started then experimenting with lots of different flavors. You can get lots of different flavors now.
Yeah, the Pepsi raspberry is very much like, here in the UK, we get like slushy. We get like blue raspberry slushy. Very similar, in flavor. But,
are you a Pepsi? You do Pepsi, not Coke?
Yeah, I'm Pepsi. I'm Pepsi. I'm Team Tea Pepsi.
I get so upset when I go somewhere and I ask for a Coke, and then like, no problem, and then they come and it's Pepsi. I was like, well, this is not Coke. Instead of water instead.
I could always remember being really confused when they would be like, oh, is Pepsi, is that okay? And I'm like, yeah.
No, it's not okay.
Well, look, and thank you so much for your time, Zoe. It's
so
absolute
welcome.
pleasure to finally, over however many years that we've spoken to one another, that this is the first time we've actually, not face-to-face, but camera to
yeah, close enough.
So, yeah, thank you very much, Zoe.
You're welcome.